So I did a video called Mindful Noodling a few months back, and that went down quite well. And I thought that the idea might have a little bit of series potential. So this is a follow-up video along similar lines. And the idea is this: I think when most people sit down to play something and they're not playing something that they've learned in advance, like a particular piece, then most of us will default to aimless blues licks or start playing the same stale old riffs that you've been playing for years. And perhaps a better thing to do might be to noodle with a bit more focus and musicality. And I'm going to be discussing some ways that you might do that in this video. It's a really great skill to develop. It means when you do find yourself in the situation where you've got to play something, whether it's in front of friends or in some kind of guitar shop situation, then you're not going to be at a loss for something musical to play. And it's also, I think, a really good way to practice, particularly when you've got limited practice time, because you're working on everything simultaneously. You're working on your rhythm guitar skills, your lead guitar skills, and you're forced to see the fretboard as a whole and to make connections between chords, scales, arpeggios, all of that stuff. So it's a really great way of practicing, I think. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a little noodle to start with, then I'm going to break down my thought process so that you'll be able to do something similar yourself. Now, when you're noodling in a mindless kind of a way, which I have to admit I am sometimes guilty of, then what you tend to do is just play aimlessly. You're not playing in time particularly, and you're not playing in a particular key or with any particular chords in mind. So the idea here is that we're going to do both of those things. We're going to have a particular tempo and rhythmic feel in mind, and then we're going to have some harmony in mind. And when you're doing this, it could just be one chord that you're playing around. It could be a pair of chords. I think that's what I did in the previous video. It was just, I can't remember what the chords were, but it was just a 2-chord kind of pattern. In this video, I'm expanding the harmonic palette a little bit, and I've got a 4-chord loop. So we're in the key of G, and the chords that I'm thinking about here are G to E minor, C, and then A minor. So we're firmly in the key of G major. All of those chords are diatonic to the key. If you wanted to number those chords, which is a very useful thing to do just to understand chord progressions, then our G major chord, that's the 1 chord, and then we've got E minor, that's the 6 chord. So G, A, B, C, D, E, the 6th chord in a major key, that's always going to be minor. And then we've got C, that's the 4 chord, and then A minor is the 2 chord. So you could describe this as a 1-6-4-2 chord progression. And the rhythmic feel that I've got in mind here is kind of a 6-8 or perhaps 12-8 kind of a thing. So each beat is divided up into 3, and you've got this kind of 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, that kind of a feeling. So a starting point with this, you might just play through those chords in a very basic kind of a way, and that's the beauty of this kind of approach. It can be as simple or as complicated as you want to make it, and you might like to start out by just establishing the chords in quite a simple kind of a way. So you could just take these 4 chords, just play some open position cowboy chords and plug in a nice solid strumming pattern. So perhaps something like this. Nothing at all wrong with that. I think it's quite an underrated skill just to be able to play solid, simple chords like that. So I'm just holding down cowboy open G chord, and the strumming pattern is this. So 1, 2 and 3 and 1, 2 and 3. And so as I say, it's kind of feeling this in 3. You could count this is kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or perhaps in a kind of 12/8 thing. I mean, 6/8 and 12/8 are often quite interchangeable kind of feels. But if I'm feeling this in 6/8, then we've got 2 bars on each chord. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. E minor. C. The strumming pattern is down, down, up, down, up, down, down, up, down, up. And as always with solid strumming, you just want to keep your strumming hand loose, keep it moving, and then you can throw in some little variations and accents just to make the whole thing come to life a little bit more. And next you might like to just start exploring some more options in terms of different chord voicings, different kind of rhythmic feels or strumming patterns. So obvious thing to do to start with might be to play some bar chords. So we could play our G like this, our E minor up here as a 5th string root bar chord, C as a 5th string root, and then A minor as a 6th string root. And maybe we'll change the rhythmic feel a little bit as well. You can really do whatever you want in terms of your overall approach to rhythm, guitar and strumming. Once you've established that tempo and that basic groove, there are many options, but maybe I could do something like this. I've got some low notes played on the bass strings and then some accents played on the higher strings. If you're feeling this in kind of a 12/8 feel, then I'm adding those accents where the drummer would probably be hitting the snare drum. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's quite effective, I think. In my little introductory piece, I was actually arpeggiating some of those chord shapes. So it's another option that you've got with this particular rhythmic feel. So perhaps, again, gives it that kind of soul ballad type feel. So one picking pattern might just be this. So 6, 5, 4, 3, 4, 5, just going down as far as the 3rd string and then back again. And I would tend to pick that, I think, down, 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 up, up, down, or down, 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 up, up, up. I think both of those options work. You can just take that round the chord progression. So just exploring some options here. You can combine bar chords and open chords. You can vary that picking pattern a little bit. So you could go, or like hit the bass note and then play some higher groups of strings. You could maybe go, So that's a nice pattern. I'm just moving higher each time. So 6, 5, 4, and then 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, kind of moving through those groups of 3 strings. So that's where you can experiment and you can have some fun, and that's the beauty of this approach. I think the fixed things that we've got here are the tempo and that kind of 6/8, 12/8 rhythmic feel and this chord progression, but within those structures you're very free to explore all of these different things. So they're almost kind of endless options, and you can just play around with them, improvise with these ideas and come up with something of your own. We now have some basic chords and a few approaches that you can take in terms of rhythm guitar. What if we now make things a little bit fancier and start throwing in some different chord voicings, maybe some little fills and things to connect these chords together. And I think what I did in my first time through the chord progression at the start of this video was something like this. So nothing too over the top, but just starting to try and make things a little bit more interesting. And when you're doing this, you kind of got rhythm guitar, you've got rhythm guitar and fills, you've got lead guitar and soloing. You can kind of strike a balance between all of these things, and it's up to you exactly how you mix these things together. But what I tried to do in my little playthrough was start simple, just establish the chord progression. Then I got a little bit fancier with some different chord voicings and some fills, and then towards the end it went into more of a kind of single note solo or improvisation. So these are all things that you can play around with. But what I was doing here, just starting off with our basic arpeggiated picking pattern, and then a very classic kind of soul or R&B feel that I used to connect me to the next chord. So whenever I'm playing a bar chord like this, I know that I've got these notes available to me as little fill notes, I suppose. So if you've got your root note here, you can use that as a jumping off point for this little major pentatonic box. So we've got frets 3, that's our root, second, you can slide up to the third, and then you're into this little major pentatonic box, the G major pentatonic scale. So it falls very naturally under the fingers. We just got 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, and you can play around with those notes. Those kind of Hendrixy kind of things, if you like, work really well in this position. So you can just play the double stop there at fret 5 on the D and A, and just slam down your third finger at the 7th fret. And you want the 2 strings to be ringing at the same time there. So, and you've got the similar idea available to you on strings 5 and 6. Of course, the trick here is to play those fills and ideas in time, so it makes the chords connect together nicely. So you got 1, 2. So there it connects very smoothly to the next chord without breaking rhythm, without breaking time, which is a really important thing here. And then on the E minor chord, I did something like that. So just coming out of our E minor chord shape, just finding a little note to use to embellish the chord slightly. So my root is here, just sliding up to this F sharp, which is the 2nd or the 9th, and just letting that ring against the open 3rd string. It gives that nice minor 2nd dissonance. So you can always just throw that in whenever you're playing an E minor chord. And then just using some single notes to connect smoothly to the next chord. So I'm going to the C chord here. I'm really just using my ear to find those notes, but if you wanted to analyze it in terms of theory, then you're going to want to try and use notes in the key, so from the G major scale. So you've got those notes in the G major scale, and I'm heading for this note here, so that's my target. And then I'm into the C chord, and so I'm kind of hearing a melody there. So I've got, and you hit the C chord. So following that melody through the chord progression. So on the C chord, I'm embellishing the C chord with this B note here. So I'm using my pinky there at the 4th fret on the 3rd string, and that's giving you a G major 7. This B is a major 7, and again, I like the way it rings against the C note here. It's that minor 2nd sound once again. And that's taking me to the A minor, and you can embellish or extend this chord as well. So you can turn an A minor into an A minor 7 just by putting down your pinky there. So with any of these chords, you can always extend the voicings a little bit. So you could start off with just your basic majors and minors, so G, E minor, C and A minor. You could add a 7th to some or to all of those chords. So we could play a G major 7 to E minor 7, then C major 7, A minor 7, and you've got other options as well. You could add in 9ths or sus4s or whatever you like. Usually the best sounding additions to these chords are going to be notes from the key, but you just play around and find some nice stuff. So with the G, add in the 9th, add in the 9th there to the E minor. That's a C, add 9, and then on the A minor, could be adding the 9th there maybe. So lots of nice colours that you can play around with. Then we can take things a little bit further by perhaps venturing a little bit further up the fretboard and throwing in some double stops, some single note lines. I think the important thing to begin with is just to establish that chord progression, so you've got that in your head and in the ears of your audience as well. And then once you've got that, you can be a little bit freer. I mean, you always want to be paying attention to the chord progression, and when I'm playing single notes or double stops, I'm always thinking about which chord I'm on at any given moment. That's going to dictate exactly which notes I'm using. But you don't always need to hold down the solid rhythm guitar. That's kind of implied, and it's in the background when you're playing all of the single note stuff. So I went into my second time through the chord progression, and I did something like this. So it's starting to get a little bit more adventurous now. So beginning with the G major bar chord, but then going into some double stops here. So if we're in the key of G major, you've got these double stops available from the key. So if you want to be thorough, you can map out these shapes on different string pairs. So I'm using 6 here on strings 3 and 5, so my jumping off shape is coming right out of this bar chord, but then you can just kind of map out these shapes from the key along the length of those 2 strings. So just diatonic 6 in the key of G major, and once again we can use those just to connect between the chords and to add in little fills. So using those 6 to connect these, because I think what I actually did was so going up into a higher voicing of the G major chord here. So I'm often thinking in terms of the caged system with these chord voicings. So really in any given area of the neck you should be able to find all 4 of these chords. If I want to move higher up the neck, I've got my G chord available here. This is in the C kind of a grip, and I've got various embellishments available here as well. So I could play a C major 7th like that, or I could play it like this. It's in fact the same chord voicing I used earlier as a C major chord, but I'm playing it as a G here, a G major 7, and just using my pinky to catch that F sharp note. That's the major 7, a really nice sounding voicing. Then we're moving to the E minor chord. So just embellishing around that chord. So here's my chord shape, it's E minor, and then I've got notes available to embellish with. So I might think E minor pentatonic here, which is the same thing as G major pentatonic, and you've got all of these kind of Hendrixy things in this position. I can kind of come down into the next position of the pentatonic scale there. This little box that I was talking about earlier. So that all works really well for the E minor. Remember, you've got open strings available to you as well, and work particularly well in the key of G. So for that E minor, I'm just going to hit that low E string just to hold down that bass note. I'm connecting to the C chord. I think I did this. It's that kind of Manic Street Preachers type chord I've got here. It's a C power chord. You've got the open B string as well, giving you again that major 7th sound. Just little notes from the key. So here, A minor, and just thinking really kind of A minor 9th, just throwing in some extensions. If you bar all the way across at the 5th fret, and then I've got 7 on the A string, pinky at the 9th fret on the D, that's A minor 9th, or A minor add 9, I think is probably the more correct term for that. But you can just use these 2 notes. It's that minor 2nd dissonance. Once again, it's something I use a lot. So we've just got, this is the 9th or the 2nd, and the minor 3rd. You can throw in the root note as an open string. So just playing around the A minor pentatonic scale really there. Then I went round the chord progression again, and I'm just going to kind of rattle through some of the ideas that I was using, what was going through my head. I'm not expecting anyone to learn this stuff note for note. It was really just a kind of an improvisation. But if you can take some of these ideas and concepts, make them your own, then that's going to be a far better thing to do. So continuing with the chord progression, we're back to the one chord, the G. So just went into some inversions here. So spread triad inversions. So with G major, you've got, that's a root position spread triad. So 3, 5. I'm skipping the 4th string, and then 4 on the 3rd string, and we can just invert that. Put the 3rd in the bass. So 7, skipping the 5th string. I've got the 5th fret on the 4th string, and then 7th fret on the 3rd string. So that's kind of first inversion, and we could go for the 2nd inversion here. So we've got 10 and skipping the 5th string, 9 and 12. So useful little shapes. So a good way of kind of moving up the fretboard, just getting some nice connections between bass notes as well. So if I'm coming out of the A minor, hit the 3rd in the bass of the 1 chord, and I think I did a little single note thing there. So I've established that 1 chord sound, little G major pentatonic idea there. Heading to the E minor chord, so just some open low E string as a root note and then a little melody played on the 5th string. Maybe some embellished chords, E minor 9. That's a nice chord there, so 12th fret barring the top 4 strings, and then I've got the F sharp there giving me that 9th. Coming down to, this is an E minor 7, 9, 9, 8 and 10. I played this lick, so just thinking out of a chord shape. So when I'm doing this kind of rhythm guitar and fills thing, I'm often thinking out of chord shapes. Even when I'm just doing a straight single note improvisation or a solo, I'm often thinking in terms of chord tones or triads or arpeggios, more so these days than thinking in terms of scales. It just gives you more melodic results a lot of the time. So coming out of this shape, you can kind of break that down into a C major arpeggio. I can throw in the major 7th. Or throw in the 6th as well, just really embellishing those essential chord tones. So something like that. Then something like this. So another favourite device of mine, just embellishing a triad with the 2nd. So we've got an A minor triad, something like that. So 12, 10 and 9. If we throw in this note here at the 9th fret on the D, that's the 2nd. So you hear this quite a lot. So it's a favourite device of John Coltrane, the great jazz sax player, just embellishing the triad with the 2nd. It always works and it always sounds great. Just playing it up an octave there as well. And then I just had a little kind of pet lick. This is just something that I've got in my vocabulary. So whenever you're doing these kind of, I call them improvisations, but a lot of this stuff is just stuff that's under my fingers anyway. This is kind of a lick which just falls very naturally for me over this particular chord. So if I'm playing A minor, I quite like it. It's got some kind of unison notes in there. So 12 and 17 on the top string, to 17 and 13 on the B, to 14 and 16 on the 3rd string. And the final time round the chord progression, back to the G chord. Just finding a little melody on the 2nd string, just using my ear to find some good sounding notes. I've got the open 3rd string, which is just holding down the harmony, really giving me the root note. And then we're going to E minor. And really just playing out of triad shapes or out of chord shapes. There's my E minor triad. I can add in the 2nd. And I think I had the open top string in there as well. I like kind of throwing in random open strings where I can. It's kind of a Johnny Marr kind of thing, I suppose. So wherever you can get an interesting sounding open string in there, I think that always sounds good. So you can do it here. I just took the same idea just a bit higher up the fretboard. And then just back to C, playing around that chord shape as before. So just you're coming through triads, using some thirds here, I think, as well. So, and important to notice how all of this stuff is connected. I've got these thirds here. One way of seeing that is it's a part of this triad shape. So you take a note away from a triad, and you've got either thirds or fourths, and similarly triads are structures found within bigger chords. So if you've got this kind of bar chord shape, it's made up essentially of triad shapes, and then you can play that as double stops, and then you can play it as single notes, and you've got an arpeggio which you can use for single note improvisation. So everything is connected here. And then finally we've got A minor, and I just did this kind of sliding sliding fourths things is something that I've just got in my vocabulary when you're playing over an A minor chord. I suppose one way of thinking about it is joining up the dots in a minor pentatonic scale, and then you've mostly got these fourths intervals. So it all works really nicely over that. Then just a little G major country-ish lick just to take us back home to the one chord again. And that's about it. I realise I've done quite a lot of talking here, but I think it's important for me just to explain my thought process here when I'm doing this. So we've got quite a simple chord progression, but you've got almost unlimited options with this stuff. So this is good example of why I like this way of practicing, just choosing a chord progression and playing with it in a kind of musical way. I'm kind of bringing everything to bear on this chord progression, really. So we've got chord tones, we've got triads, double stops, sixths, thirds, we've got spread triads, we've got cowboy chords, jazz chords, all kinds of stuff. You can play around with all of this stuff when you're practicing in this kind of a way. So I'll hand things over to you. What I'd like you to do, rather than trying to learn what I'm doing, is just to take that chord progression and that rhythmic feel and do things your own way. By all means, steal a few of my ideas if there are some ideas in there or licks there that you like, but the idea is to sort of get into a flow when you're doing this and kind of improvise with these ideas. And the more you do it, the more natural it becomes, and you can pretty quickly just pick up a guitar and play something that sounds fairly satisfying musically, and way better than just picking up a guitar and aimlessly noodling around a bunch of blues licks. A quick bit of tone talk then, and today I'm using my Telecaster. This is a 52 reissue Telecaster from the 1990s. That's going into my Fender Princeton, and just using one pedal, which is the MXR Booster pedal. And this is a pedal that I've been getting quite into lately. I think it sounds really good. I paid for this pedal with my own money. It's not an advert for MXR, although I do think they make some really good and quite affordable pedals. And this one, it seems to be more than just a booster. I think there is some kind of circuitry in there which acts as a kind of preamp, and it does add a certain special something to the sound. I think it certainly sounds better with that switched on than when it's off. So it's kind of become a go-to pedal when I want a clean guitar sound, but I want it to sound a little bit more interesting than just plugging a guitar straight into an amp. So without the boost pedal, and switch it on. So yeah, just seems to add a little bit of sparkle, a bit of depth to the sound, maybe a little bit of kind of compression as well. But yeah, I like what it does. That's it for this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Remember, lesson materials will be available on my Patreon page, and I'm going to write out my introductory noodle in its entirety, and I'm also going to write out a lot of the other ideas that I've been discussing in this video. If you like what I do and you're not yet a subscriber to this channel, then I'd appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button. I do hate saying that in videos, it's just a bit boring, but it does help this channel to grow. It helps me keep on doing what I'm doing. And thanks very much for watching. I will see you next time.